A very warm welcome to this, our first address as part of our Epiphany Online Quiet Day. A reading from the prophet Isaiah. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together, they come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephah, all those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. These words from the prophet Isaiah encapsulate the Epiphany story we know so well. An image portrayed in crib scenes and in nativity plays the world over. The Magi journey from the east to pay homage to an infant whose significance is shown by the leading of a star. They come bearing gifts, gold for a king, frankincense for divinity, and myrrh for embalming, a sign of what is to come. These gifts reveal the identity of this child as the Christ, the anointed king, not just of God's ancient people, the Jews, but of all peoples and of all creation. Christ gathers all to himself. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. And at the heart of this narrative is the bearing and receiving of gifts. And that's what I'd like us to ponder for just a few moments this morning. Gifts. What does it mean to bear them? What does it mean to receive them? We are all experienced in giving gifts at Christmas. There is a tradition in some countries also of giving gifts at Epiphany. Yet even these laudable traditions can become caught up in an economy of exchange. If someone gives a gift unexpectedly, we often feel guilty that we haven't prepared one for them, and we rush out to see what we can buy to reciprocate. Yet true gifts have significance in a different way, because they don't seek anything in return, and they cannot be measured. They may involve simply the offering of our time, of our hospitality, of our presence, of our love. The more you think about it, the more you notice this gift giving at work in the world around us. Think of the person who volunteers for a charity or a community organisation, or the person who takes time to stop and chat to someone who might be lonely. Think of the person who has helped a neighbour during this time of pandemic, or someone who has simply remembered you in their prayers when you needed it most. The most cherished gifts I have received have been drawings and notes from my children. They weren't polished or perfect or professional, but they bore something of the giver, a reflection of their care and of their love. And that gift of care and love is one which we have all received, and one which we are called to bear to others, passing on the imprint of its creator. We are invited to make Christ manifest in the world through the offering of the gifts of our hearts and our very selves to others. Sometimes we feel that we have little to offer. Sometimes we find it very difficult to receive. But the message of Epiphany is that we do have much to bear, and that we can bear it with joy. I'd like to end by telling you a traditional Russian folk story, which teaches so much about what it means to truly offer our gifts to the Christ child. If you're sitting comfortably, then I'll begin. It's the story of Papa Panov. It was Christmas Eve. The lights danced merrily in the streets. Families laughed and sang and unwrapped their presents. But Papa Panov, the village shoemaker, sat in his home alone. His wife was dead, his children grown up and moved away. And so he sat by himself, an old Bible in his lap, and looked for company in the story of the first Christmas. There were Mary and Joseph, tired and hungry with nowhere to stay. I would have given them a room, Papa Panov thought. There is plenty of space in this old house of mine. There were the shepherds too, and the angels, and 3 kings from the east bearing gifts. Now what would I have brought? Papa Panov wondered. And he reached for a little box perched on the top of the highest shelf in his shop. There were 2 tiny shoes in that box, sewn once upon a time by his own nimble fingers, fingers now grown gnarled and stiff. That's what I would have brought him, Papa Panov smiled, my very best work. Then his head dropped slowly to one side, his glasses fell crooked on his nose, and Papa Panov fell asleep. All Christmas Eve he slept, and while he slept, he dreamed. He dreamed of his wife, and of his children, and of the happy Christmases they had shared. He saw their faces just as he remembered them, laughing and singing and shouting with joy. And just as the aching sadness of that dream became too much for him to bear, Papa Panov saw another face, a kind and gentle face. I am Jesus, said the face. I have seen your loneliness and your sorrow, and so this Christmas Day I shall visit you. Watch for me, Papa Panov. The old man woke with a start. The morning sun was shining in his eyes. It was Christmas Day, and if the dream was true, then Jesus was coming to visit him. Papa Panov tidied up his house. He put a pot of fresh coffee on the stove, and then every few minutes he peeped out of the window. And that's when he saw the man. It could have been Jesus, walking slowly down the street, holding a shepherd's staff. But as the man got closer, Papa Panov recognized him. It was Sergei, the village street sweeper, who was faithfully doing his job, even on Christmas Day. Papa Panov opened his door and called to the man, "You look cold, my friend, and it must be lonely out there on Christmas morning. Come in and join me for a cup of coffee." The street sweeper hurried into Papa Panov's house. He dusted the snow from his shoulders. He rubbed his freezing hands together. And when Papa Panov handed him the hot mug, he just held it for a while and let the steam rise like a warm cloud over his cold face. Sergei drank his coffee slowly, and though Papa Panov chatted politely to him and even told him about the dream, the shoemaker still kept an eye on the street outside. "Well, I hope your dream comes true," said the street sweeper at last, "but I have to get back to work. Thank you for your coffee and for your kindness." And with a grateful Merry Christmas, he picked up his broom and went back to sweep the street. 1 hour passed, then 2. and slowly the street became busy. Papa Panov put a pot of cabbage soup and watched his neighbours wander off to visit their relatives, but still there was no sign of Jesus. There was a girl, however, a girl he did not recognise. She walked slowly along the street, a bundle in her arms, and because her clothes were torn and ragged, she shivered with each step. Papa Panov opened his door again. He looked up and down the street, and when he'd made sure that Jesus was not there, he called to the girl, "Come here. Come in from the cold." Papa Panov poured out another cup of coffee and gave the girl a seat close to the stove. He offered to take her bundle, but the girl clutched it tightly to her chest, and that's when the bundle began to cry. "My baby's hungry," the girl whispered. So Papa Panov warmed some milk, and as the girl fed the baby and slowly unwrapped the thin blankets, Papa Panov noticed that the child had no shoes. His thoughts flew straight away to that little box again, the one perched on the top of his highest shelf. But those shoes were for Jesus, he argued silently with himself. The baby cried again, and another look at those frozen toes settled the argument once and for all. Papa Panov reached up, took the box down from the shelf, and put the little shoes before the girl. "I can't take those," she wept. "They're far too fine for someone like me." "For the child's sake, then," Papa Panov pleaded, "for Christmas." When the girl had gone, Papa Panov looked out of the window again. The sun was low in the sky now, and there was still no sign of Jesus. But there were plenty of beggars wandering the streets in search of a little Christmas cheer. So Papa Panov opened his door to them. He had a pot of cabbage soup after all, and they slurped it down gratefully. It was dark by the time the last beggar left, and Papa Panov was tired. So he slumped down in his chair again, more sad and lonely than he had been the night before. "It must have been a dream," he sighed, "only a dream." And at that moment, Papa Panov knew that he was not alone. He looked up, and there was that face again. It was Jesus, standing in the doorway. "When I was hungry," Jesus said, "you fed me. When I was cold, you comforted me. And when I was naked, you gave me something to wear." "But when?" asked Papa Panov. "When did I do these things for you?" "When you warmed the street sweeper, and fed the beggars, and gave your finest shoes to a poor and shivering child. That's when," Jesus smiled. "Merry Christmas, Papa Panov," he said at last, and then he appeared into the night, like a vision, like a ghost, like a dream. We continue to wish you every blessing as you reflect and pray and ponder on this quiet day. We invite you to join us for midday prayer at 12 o'clock, and I think you'll be pleased to find Tilly awaiting you here in the garden.